I'm Fred Satilli. This is our new podcast dedicated to the Voters Union of what I like to think of as Accountability Nation. Now, I usually like to speak extemporaneously, but because this is the first episode, I'm going to read the list of issues, and I guess I'll have my moments, but I'll do my best. We have found that there are a great many issues. In fact, a majority of people agree with many common sense issues that don't seem to ever be addressed. Among these are, first, the two-tiered justice system. We're supposed to have a system of law that's the same for everybody, not a system of permission. Some of these politicians and authority figures get permission to do things that the rest of us would not be allowed to. Another big issue is the devastation of our children and our parents in what is euphemistically called family court. We have a lot of family law malfeasance. Everybody knows it. Let's not deny it. Let's address it. We have a need for a moral society. We have too much uncertainty in our society, and that leads to psychiatric problems resulting in substance abuse, violence against each other, and even suicide of ourselves. We need regional control, not federal control, of our school system's curricula. We need to have control of our national sovereignty. We're not just here to be taken advantage of by every other nation. We're a sovereign nation, and we need to start acting like one. Most people agree with this. We need secure elections. I don't need to say much more about that. We need acknowledgement and identification of our enemies. We definitely need smaller government. We certainly need reduction of our national debt, including oversight of the Federal Reserve. It's a big topic. We need cancellation of public funding for colleges and universities that have a budget from an endowment that's greater than the budget of some of our states. And of course, we need truth in media. These subjects and many other such common sense topics are what this podcast is about. These outrages can only be addressed by a union of voters who identify themselves as the Accountability Nation. Now, in football here in LA, we have the Raider Nation. And in music, I'm sure many of you remember the Kiss Army. Even Lady Gaga has her union of little monsters, right? So if they can do it, we certainly should be able to. Now, as I usually like to talk extemporaneously, but I'm a little nervous because the first podcast, and I'm trying to really make this perfect. Plus, we're on coronavirus lockdown, and I have this uncharacteristic beard, which for some reason, about 6-7 days ago, I figured if I wasn't going out, I'd let it grow and see what it looks like. So far, I'm horrified, but that's not the point of the podcast. Anyway, now, I'm eager to have this podcast be the voice of many, but because of the lockdown, I'm doing this alone. So the subject of today's podcast is integrity. And I officially learned about integrity in the Boy Scouts. And that's when the Boy Scouts were really something great, you know. Now there's some controversy. It's really a shame. But I did a lot of things as a kid, and some of them didn't turn out so good, you know. And my dad used to call it pulling a stunt. And typically he would say, well, I heard you pulled a stunt today in school and got sent to the principal's office. So, you know, had a lot of those incidents. Anyway, what I learned was that when you do something bad, there's three things that have to happen, or three things that you have to do, right? The first, pardon me. cough this week. The first is you acknowledge the act. You say, yes, I did that. The second is you show contrition. You say, I'm sorry I did that. And the third thing is you say, what can I do to make it right? Right? You offer the remedy. What can I do to make it right? Now, in my case, why I say in the Boy Scouts was, I went to Boy Scout camp and I had a tent mate and I borrowed something that didn't belong to me. It was pretty innocent. I just wanted to use it, and the problem was that I lost it. Somewhere along the line, fell out of my pocket. So I had to go to the guy and say, look, I took this, it wasn't mine, I had no business touching it, I did wrong. I'm really sorry I did that. Can I just buy you a new one? What can I do to make it right? Now the great thing about integrity is when you come clean like that, well, his reaction was, he says, look, Fred, I'm glad you told me that. You know, I'm glad you fessed up, you know. I really don't care too much about it. It's not really a problem. And we have a bigger thing ahead of us, which was the Boy Scout Olympics. Now, in the Boy Scout Olympics, he said, let's go out and run. Let's train. Let's run. Now, it was important to me because the end of the Olympics was a marathon, and the second leg of the marathon was running. And I was the second fastest runner, so I had to run through the woods long and far and hard on a path. And the reason that they had me the second fastest was because the other guy was the first fastest, but he was also the first fastest in swimming, and the third leg was swimming, and he had to do that. I couldn't swim, so he had to do that. And so he dropped the fact that I had lost his belonging, and I appreciated that. And I was really, when I realized I had lost it and I went back and looked and I couldn't find it, and I realized that my blood ran cold. I really felt bad about it. I actually do to this day. I mean, you know, I'm not losing any sleep, but it's, you know, just, you know, when you're a jerk, you're a jerk. So anyway, the Olympic thing came and there was lots of events, but at the end, the marathon, I ran so hard, and when I passed that other kid in the woods, you know, to get to the swimmers first and pass the baton on to the swimmer. And I was so proud, and I was emotionally scarred up from the day before, you know, and I just wanted to make good and prove myself. And that guy jumped in the water. He's a fantastic swimmer. And he had to swim out to the dock and tag somebody and then swim back to finish the thing. But when he came up under the dock to make the tag, he bashed his head on the dock, and he got this big cut across his forehead that was bleeding. But it didn't even slow him down. He swam back and ran back, you know, ran up onto the beach and you know, passed the baton, and he shook hands with me, and I just felt like $1 million. And he had the blood right on his face. Of course, he was the big hero, because when you're bloody, you know, it's great. But it was just a fantastic thing, and this is where taking ownership and confession and contrition, most times people will meet you halfway, you know, and if it's not soluble, if you've done something really egregious and you have to make up for it, well, you do your best to make up for it. Now, that brings me a little hay fever. That brings me to the voters' union, right? Accountability Nation. We want accountability, and we have a situation here in California. We have a 49th Assembly District that's in the San Gabriel Valley. For those of you who may know what that is, it's Alhambra and El Monte and Rosemead, and you know, there are about 10 towns. And up there's an assemblyman named Ed Chow. Now, Ed Chow voted for something a couple years ago called Prop 47. Now, Prop 47 was, I'm sure that Ed Chow had the best of intentions when he voted for this. At least I'm giving him the benefit of a doubt. It was called the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act. And what it did was it reduced the penalty for theft of less than $950 per incident from a felony to a misdemeanor. So if somebody robbed your house every day of $900, he would get nothing really much worse than a traffic ticket. He would get a summons to appear in court at his own recognizance someday. And this resulted in a tremendous increase in crime. Car break-ins, home break-ins, minor assaults, that kind of thing, because there virtually became very little penalty for those things. Now, in addition to that, they took people who were in prison for felonies, they reduced their felony to a misdemeanor and released them back into the territory, and this added to the homeless problem. So we had people who had been in jail, they're now back, and a lot of them were homeless. And so now the town, in addition to having more crime, it had a potential for even more crime and more homeless people, more liability. It was a terrible thing. Now, what should happen is that Ed Chow should say, look, I voted for Prop 47 with the best of intentions. I'm trying to help reduce the prison population, or I'm trying to decriminalize some small problems. Although I don't know about you, but if somebody robbed $900 from me, that would be a huge problem, and my reaction would be just short of violence. But anyway, what Ed Chow should come forward like a gentleman with integrity and say, I voted for Prop 47. It didn't work out well. I acknowledge that. I'm sorry about that. Now, what can I do to make it right? And obviously, what would make it right is the repeal of Prop 47. Now, that wouldn't help all the damage that's been done in the last few years with the increase in crime. But at least we would know that he had enough integrity to repeal something that's still on the books, that's still working, and still bad for the 49th Assembly District, and frankly, every other Assembly District in California. In fact, everybody who voted for this should be working on the repeal. That would really be the thing to do. Now, until he does that, the Union of Voters for Accountability Nation should vote him out of office. They have to demonstrate that they need people of integrity in government, not hacks who serve some weird special interest agenda. We're going to go with common sense for our representatives, right? That's our way here in America. Liberty, freedom, achievement, unity of a common purpose, understood by the clarity of a common language, not division through fragmenting diversity. I really hope you understand that. You know, you look in the Bible, the Tower of Babel, it's a pretty clear story. It's got a pretty clear message. And certainly, we don't want the yoke of socialism, fascism, or communism. So, thank you again. I'm Fred Satilli. And let's let the Union of Voters of the Accountability Nation rise up and grow to bring sanity to our mad, just insane world. Thank you. We're going to be great.